What is going on, Brooklyn Nets fans, NBA fans of all? This is another video from Hit Squad Productions, and in this video, we're going to go over the crazy game I just witnessed, which was the Brooklyn Nets and the Cleveland Cavaliers game. This was the Big Three debut. Now, as you guys know, the Nets fall to the Cleveland Cavaliers in double overtime, 135 to 147, and now we will fall to 9-7. Now, this was the first game against the Cavs. The next game will be this Friday, and honestly, front to back, this was a very crazy game. Not just for the Nets, but for the Cleveland Cavaliers as well. There's definitely some optimism for Cavs fans. I got to give the Cleveland Cavaliers credit for how they used their most recent acquisitions. Now, this game ended up going into double overtime, like I stated, and was definitely a little too close for me. To say the least, a little too close for me. Especially when Colin Sexton drops a three with 1.5 seconds left in overtime. Look, I know that there was some questionable calls in this game, especially against Kyrie. I thought the most notable call was against James Harden with that potential travel in overtime. But look, I understand why, that really wasn't called. And I understand why Kyrie was called for that offensive foul. But let's break this down. Now, going into our first overtime, these are the stats we have. Kyrie Irving had 30 points. He was 12 for 20 in field goals, 3 assists. Kevin Durant had 30 points, 10 for 20 in field goals, 8 rebounds. James Harden had 17 points, 9 assists, and 8 rebounds. Now, the final stats were Kyrie Irving had 37 points. He had 3 assists. KD had 38 points, another 30-point game, 12 rebounds, made 8 out of 10 free throws. James Harden had 21 points. He also had a triple-double. Now, I thought the most notable player on this roster that really stood out to me was DeAndre Jordan. I've liked the DeAndre Jordan pickup. I think he's been a solid pickup for us, and I think that he's been very versatile on this team. He had 13 points by the third quarter, which was impressive. And defensively, he's been making his presence. Now, I don't think that, that's anything too shocking considering the fact that he's been doing that for the better part of his career. Now, the headline in this game, obviously, this was going to be Kyrie's first game back. He missed the last 7 games due to him taking off time for social justice and mental health reasons. He also had to go through the COVID protocols. Plus, he took the game off against the Bucks to get back into game shape. Now, look, Kyrie, I completely support what he's doing. I understand that there are fans and people around the NBA that are very divided with the Kyrie Irving situation. But in my honest opinion, I'm not worried about Uncle Drew. I know he's going to ball on the court, and I 100% support him off of the court. Now, look, I know that he'll get back in rhythm. And even with that, with him being a little rusty, he still had a solid game. That is very impressive on Kyrie Irving's part. And I know he had that big offensive foul with 1.5 seconds left in the fourth quarter, which the Nets ended up challenging. And the call ended up being overturned, which was definitely questionable. But as a Nets fan, I have no issues with that. It ended up turning into a jump ball. Now, they said Colin Sexton reached in, but to me, it was an obvious foul. And I thought it was hard to overturn. But I think, if you're Steve Nash, you have nothing to lose. Call a challenge. Now, even with that, Kyrie still looked solid and had a good game. He had the game-tying score to make it 113 and 113. Now, if I'm the Nets, we have to step back and figure out the best way to use all 3 of these guys. Everyone is saying that this isn't going to work, and I honestly could agree less. I couldn't agree. I cannot agree with that statement whatsoever. I think the Nets will prove them wrong. I think the Nets should use Kyrie in a high pick and roll, and we should see what happens. Take what the defense is giving you. You're going to get the most out of KD and James Harden. They're going to put up points. KD is averaging 30 points a game, which is insane. Now, the Cavs did have their ring ceremony, and, look, I know Kyrie Irving had to show his fingers stating that, I won this ring with you guys. You guys should be very grateful for that. And honestly, they should. They should. I like that. I love the sassiness with Kyrie Irving. I love that. I think it adds to his swagger. Look, no one denies the ability and the talent of Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving, you cannot debate this, has the best handles we have ever seen. I understand that he can be kind of out there with the earth being flat and into conspiracies, but I don't know about you, but I think about conspiracies all the freaking time about anything. I think if you don't question everything, there is definitely a problem. Question everything, folks. Question everything. I support you, Kyrie Irving. Now, I think another storyline to this would be obviously the return of Jarrett Allen, who we traded in the Harden trade. Now, looking at this game, the Nets looked out of sync. They looked very out of sync. They looked like they were orchestrating everything on the spot, which is understandable. This team is still getting used to playing with each other. I don't think they're going to have a lot of games like this. This was Harden's third game with the Brooklyn Nets, and honestly, he didn't look too well. Harden's first field goal came in the half, and he looked out of sync and had so many turnovers against him. Again, I don't want to get too hard on them because this unit is still getting used to each other. Now, he did have 15 points, which was low, going into the fourth quarter. And then, like I said, he ended up having a triple-double. But again, this team looked out of sync, and Cleveland was well rested too. I think they were coming off of a five-game stretch of not being able to practice or let alone have any games. So, they were well rested. They have some players coming back too. So I got to give a lot of credit to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, you got to give credit to the Cavs for playing up to the Nets, and especially on the defensive side, they were solid against the Nets. Look, the Cavs made this game closer than it should have been. Again, I don't think Brooklyn will have many games like this, but they definitely made it closer than it should have been. Taurean Prince was making the buckets he wasn't making when he was here, and honestly, that makes me upset, but hey, credit to him. He's going to do well in Cleveland. He was all over the court, and he had himself a good game against us. Jared Allen was a difference maker for them, and honestly, he was even a solid player for us. I know the Nets wanted to do everything they can to keep Jared Allen. I personally like Jared Allen, but he's going to do very well in Cleveland, and I think that they can use him in a number of different ways. Look, Andre Drummond did well as well. Especially with him using his big body in the paint, and you got to give credit to Larry Nance. Now, I thought, the MVP of the game was definitely on the Cavaliers side of the ball. Colin Sexton was clutch for the Cavs. It was really the piece, really keeping the Cavs in this game in the first place. Colin had an amazing game with 42 points. Now, look. Let's stop talking about the Cavs. Let's stop that. Let's stop. KD not only deserves comeback player of the year, but heavy MVP consideration, at least so far. I know Joel Embiid is having a great year, but trust me, KD, going down the stretch, I have more trust in KD not only bringing his team farther, but winning that MVP title. KD has proven that he's still that guy, and he had another great game. He had another 30-point game, almost had 40 points, and that's insane. He makes it look so easy. I love it. And honestly, look, Nets fans, let me talk to you really quick. There was moments in this game where the Cavs, they would be up 8, and then they miss as little as 2 shots, and that was more than enough time for the Nets to come back. The Nets have playmakers on this team right and left, and they could put points on the board easily and quick. Now, defensively, the Nets are solid as well. They have players to shut down opposing teams while having the firepower to blow out teams. Obviously, this didn't translate in this game. While we didn't blow out the Cavs, nowhere near that. And look, I think people have to remember that this was the first time that these 3 players were playing all together on the same court. Even with that, I thought they did fairly decent. But I had to say, they have to build stronger chemistry, and I think that they will. The season is still early. We're still growing and building chemistry, even out of sync and playing a Cavs team that didn't play for 5 days and were healthy and had players coming back. They were still in the game to the end, and they brought it down to the final second. Obviously, they didn't come off too high in the double overtime than they did in the first overtime, which, they got to go back to the drawing board and figure that out. But I have every bit of confidence that they will bounce back on Friday and get that dub. Let me know your thoughts below. How are you guys feeling about this game? Again, I thought this was a great game. Obviously, with this, this loss, we dropped to 9-7. We're gonna have to do quite a bit, if we want to get up there in the top seed. But again, this is still early, guys. This is still early. I have every faith in the Brooklyn Nets and Steve Nash. Again, let me know your thoughts below. If you're new to the channel, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Let us know your thoughts below, and we'll see you in the next video. What?